You know it's going to be a bad night when your wife starts the New Year's Eve party by announcing she's finally ready to live her truth. Those were Nina's exact words as she adjusted her black dress, the one that cost more than my monthly car payment, and checked her lipstick in the hallway mirror one last time before our guests arrived. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I should have known right then. Should have seen the signs written in her perfectly applied mascara and the way she kept glancing toward the Malloy house next door. But I was busy being the good husband, arranging cheese platters and making sure we had enough champagne for the neighbors who were about to watch my marriage explode in real time. My name is Owen Barlow, and I'm what you'd call an unremarkable man living an unremarkable life in Millbrook, Connecticut. 36 years old, project manager for a mid-sized IT company, the kind of guy who knows more about server configurations than social configurations. I wear khakis to work, drive a sensible Honda, and until tonight, I thought I had a sensible marriage to match. Nina and I had been married for 8 years. She worked as a real estate photographer, which meant she spent her days making other people's houses look perfect for the camera. Apparently, she'd decided our house, and our marriage, wasn't worth the same effort. The first guests arrived at 7:30. The Hendersons from across the street, carrying a bottle of wine and wearing matching sweaters that screamed, "We still like each other." Behind them came Angie Walsh, Nina's best friend, and the neighborhood's unofficial gossip coordinator. Angie had the kind of smile that made you check your pockets afterward. "Owen!" Angie squealed, air kissing my cheek with lips that tasted like too much perfume. "Nina looks absolutely radiant tonight. Doesn't she look radiant, Harold?" Harold Henderson nodded politely, but his eyes were already scanning our living room like he was pricing it for a quick sale. "Great party setup, Owen. Very festive." More neighbors filtered in, the Kowalskis, the Patels, Mike Brennan from Nina's office, a guy with wandering eyes and wandering hands who made my skin crawl. Everyone brought wine or appetizers and that particular brand of suburban small talk that fills the air like expensive cologne. But I was waiting for one specific guest, Trent Malloy, our next-door neighbor, the guy who'd been helping Nina with her garden photography all summer. 35 years old, owns a landscaping business, drives a truck that's been detailed more often than some people shower. The kind of man who thinks a tight t-shirt and a confident smile can solve any problem. Trent arrived at 8:15 with his fiancée, Laurel. She was a social worker, genuinely nice person, the kind of woman who probably rescued stray cats and volunteered at soup kitchens. She deserved better than what was about to happen to her. "Owen, buddy!" Trent slapped my shoulder like we were old friends instead of neighbors who'd exchanged maybe 50 words in 2 years. "Thanks for having us. Place looks great." He was wearing a black button-down that probably cost more than my entire outfit, and his hair was styled with the kind of product that promised to make women swoon. Judging by the way Nina's face lit up when she saw him, the marketing wasn't entirely wrong. "Trent, Laurel, so glad you could make it." Nina's voice had that breathy quality it used to have when we were dating, when she used to talk to me that way. "Can I get you drinks?" "Trent, I remember you like whiskey." Of course she remembered. I watched them interact, noting the way her hand lingered on his arm when she handed him his glass, the way his eyes followed her movements across the room. Laurel noticed too. I could see it in the way her smile tightened, the way she moved closer to Trent's side like she was marking territory. The party continued with the usual suburban rhythm. People clustered in small groups, discussing property values and school board elections and who was getting divorced on Maple Street. I played the host, refilling drinks and emptying ashtrays, watching my wife flirt with my neighbor while his fiancée pretended not to notice. Around 10:30, I was in the kitchen loading the dishwasher when Angie cornered me by the sink. "Owen, honey, can we talk?" Her voice had that fake concerned tone that meant gossip was about to be served. I just want you to know that if you ever need someone to talk to— About what, Angie? She glanced toward the living room where Nina and Trent were standing by the fireplace, their heads bent together over something on her phone. Oh, you know. Sometimes marriages go through rough patches. Sometimes people explore their options. I set down the plate I was holding and looked at her directly. Are you trying to tell me something specific, or are you just fishing for drama to share at your book club? Angie's face flushed. I'm just saying, as your friend— We're not friends, Angie. You're Nina's friend. There's a difference. Before she could respond, someone in the living room started counting down. 11:58, almost midnight, almost time for resolutions and fresh starts and new beginnings. I walked back into the living room, weaving between neighbors and acquaintances, all of them holding champagne glasses and wearing expectant smiles. Nina was still by the fireplace with Trent, but now Laurel was nowhere to be seen. I spotted her in the hallway, checking her coat like she was getting ready to leave. 10, 9, 8. The countdown began in earnest, voices rising together in that forced celebration that marks the end of one year and the beginning of another. 7, 6, 5. I moved closer to Nina, thinking maybe we'd share a midnight kiss like married couples do, like we used to do. 4, 3, 2. But Nina wasn't looking at me. She was looking at Trent, and he was looking back at her, and there was something in their eyes that made my stomach drop. 1. Happy New Year. And that's when my wife kissed my neighbor. Not a friendly peck on the cheek, not an accidental brush of lips under the mistletoe. A full, passionate, tongue-involved kiss that lasted long enough for everyone in the room to see it, record it, and start whispering about it. When they finally broke apart, Nina looked around the room with glassy eyes and a smile that belonged in a car wreck. Happy New Year, everyone. I'm finally ready to live my truth. Laurel made a sound like a wounded animal and ran for the door. I heard it slam behind her, followed by the sound of a car engine starting too fast. The room had gone completely silent except for the sound of champagne bubbling in forgotten glasses. Harold Henderson cleared his throat. Someone's phone was still recording. Trent had the decency to look embarrassed, but Nina was still smiling that terrible smile. Owen, honey, we need to talk. I looked around the room at our neighbors, our friends, people who would be discussing this moment for months to come. Mike from her office was smirking. Angie was practically vibrating with excitement. The Hendersons were studying their shoes like they contained the secrets of the universe. Yeah, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. I think we do. The party ended quickly after that. People made excuses about babysitters and early morning plans, grabbing their coats and avoiding eye contact. Within 20 minutes, the house was empty except for Nina, me, and the wreckage of what used to be my life. Nina kicked off her heels and sat on the couch like nothing had happened. Owen, before you say anything, I want you to know that what just happened, it wasn't planned. It just felt right. I started collecting empty glasses, keeping my hands busy so I wouldn't do something stupid with them. It felt right to humiliate me in front of our neighbors. I wasn't trying to humiliate you. I was trying to be honest. She tucked her legs under her, getting comfortable for what she probably thought would be a reasonable adult conversation. Trent and I have been talking, and we've realized we have feelings for each other. Real feelings. Talking. I set the glasses on the kitchen counter harder than necessary. Is that what you call it? Don't be crude, Owen. This is hard enough already. Hard enough. Like she was the victim in this situation. Like she was the one who'd just been publicly humiliated by the person who was supposed to love and protect her. I walked back into the living room and sat in the chair across from her, the one I'd been sitting in when I watched her kiss another man. How long? How long what? How long have you been sleeping with him, Nina? She flinched at the language, but her eyes didn't show any real shame. It's not just physical, Owen. We connect on a deeper level. He understands me in ways that you don't. How long? She sighed like I was being unreasonable. Since August. But Owen, you have to understand. August. 4 months. 4 months of lies and secret meetings and her coming home to make dinner and ask about my day while she was planning to destroy our marriage. Where? My voice sounded strange to my own ears, too calm and too quiet. Where what? Where did you sleep with him? Our bed, his truck, the office. Owen, please don't make this uglier than it has to be. Uglier than kissing him in front of our neighbors? Uglier than announcing to everyone we know that you're leaving me? How much uglier could it possibly get? She stood up and smoothed down her dress, already putting distance between us. I'm going to stay at Angie's tonight. We can talk about the practical details tomorrow when we've both had time to process this. Process this? I repeated the words like they were in a foreign language. You mean process the fact that my wife is a cheating whore who doesn't have the basic decency to end her marriage before starting a new one? Now she looked angry. Good. Anger was better than that terrible, understanding smile. You don't get to call me names, Owen. You don't get to make me feel guilty for finally finding happiness. Happiness. I laughed, and it sounded wrong in the quiet house. Is that what you call destroying 2 relationships and humiliating everyone involved? Happiness? She grabbed her purse and her overnight bag, the one she'd apparently packed before the party, because she'd planned this whole thing. I'm done talking about this tonight. We'll figure out the details later. She was halfway to the door when she turned back. Owen, I really am sorry it happened this way. I never meant to hurt you. But you did mean to leave me. Yes, I did. And then she was gone, leaving me alone in a house that smelled like other people's perfume and spilled champagne and the lingering scent of my wife's betrayal. I sat in that chair for a long time, staring at the spot where she'd kissed him, listening to the house settle around me. Somewhere in the distance I could hear fireworks going off, people celebrating the new year with joy and hope and optimism for what was to come. I picked up my phone and scrolled through the messages that had already started coming in. Videos from the party, screenshots of social media posts, neighbors and friends and co-workers who wanted to make sure I was okay or who just wanted to be the first to comment on the drama. That's when I saw it. A text message from a number I didn't recognize, sent just after midnight. Thought you should see this. Attached was a video, clearly recorded tonight, showing Nina and Trent in our kitchen during the party. They were pressed against the counter, her hands in his hair, his mouth on her neck, completely oblivious to the fact that someone was watching. I watched the video 3 times before I realized I was smiling. Not a happy smile, not even an amused smile. Something colder than that. Something that belonged to a different version of myself, one who was just being born in the wreckage of the old Owen Barlow. I set the phone down and looked around the house Nina and I had bought together, decorated together, planned to grow old in together. Tomorrow, she'd want to talk about dividing assets and custody schedules and who got to keep the good dishes. But tonight, I had work to do. I didn't sleep. Instead, I spent the hours between midnight and dawn doing what I do best, gathering information and making plans. By the time Nina's key turned in the lock at 8 a.m., I had a complete picture of exactly how much my life had been a lie. She came in quietly, probably hoping I'd still be asleep so she could avoid the awkward morning-after conversation. But I was sitting at the kitchen table with my laptop open and a cup of coffee that had gone cold hours ago, surrounded by printouts that told the story of my marriage's end in excruciating detail. Owen? Are you awake? She appeared in the doorway wearing yesterday's dress and this morning's guilt, her makeup smudged and her hair still messed up from whatever she'd been doing at Angie's house, or wherever she'd really spent the night. Good morning, Nina. Sleep well? She winced at my tone, but came into the kitchen anyway, moving carefully like she was approaching a dangerous animal. We need to talk about last night, about what happens next. I agree. But first, I think you should see what I've been working on. I turned the laptop screen toward her and clicked play on the video I'd received. Her face went white as she watched herself making out with Trent in our kitchen while our guests drank our champagne in the next room. Owen, where did you get that? Someone at the party sent it to me, anonymously. Thoughtful of them, don't you think? I clicked to the next file. This one's from your phone. Amazing what you can find when someone leaves their laptop logged into their iCloud account. The screen filled with text messages between Nina and Trent, dating back to July. Hundreds of them. Plans to meet, complaints about their respective partners, explicit descriptions of what they wanted to do to each other. And worse than the private content were the casual cruelties. Owen's working late again, perfect timing. Laurel's at her book club. We have 3 hours. He's so clueless, it's almost sad. Nina sank into the chair across from me, her face cycling through shock, anger, and something that might have been fear. You went through my private messages? Your private messages that you accessed using our shared computer? The same computer you used to plan your affair while I was paying the bills and buying your groceries and being your clueless husband? I scrolled through more messages, letting her see just how much I'd found. Did you know Trent calls me the IT nerd in these? Very creative. Owen, I know you're hurt, but going through my phone isn't going to help anything. You're right. It's not going to help our marriage because our marriage is over, but it's going to help a lot with other things. I opened a new window on the laptop. For instance, it's going to help when Laurel sees these screenshots. I'm sure she'll be very interested in the message where Trent calls her a boring prude who doesn't understand him. Nina's face went even paler. You can't send those to Laurel. That would destroy her. Like you destroyed me last night? Like you've been destroying our marriage for 4 months while I thought we were just going through a rough patch. I leaned back in my chair, studying her face. But you're right, it would destroy her. So maybe I won't send them. Maybe. What do you want, Owen? It was a good question. What did I want? Yesterday, I would have said I wanted my marriage to work, wanted my wife to love me, wanted the simple suburban life we'd built together. But that Owen was gone, buried under the weight of public humiliation and private betrayal. This Owen wanted something different. I want you to understand that actions have consequences, I said. I want you to realize that you don't get to blow up 2 marriages and walk away without any damage to yourself. She stood up, trying to regain some control of the situation. Fine. You're angry. You have every right to be angry. But we're adults, Owen. We can handle this like adults. Adults. I laughed, and she flinched at the sound. Is it adult to sleep with your neighbor while you're engaged to someone else? Is it adult to humiliate your husband in front of everyone you know? Help me understand the adult part of this situation. I made mistakes. I know that. But destroying other people isn't going to make you feel better. You might be surprised what makes me feel better these days. I closed the laptop and stood up. But let's talk about practical matters. You said you wanted to discuss details. Relief flooded her face. She thought we were moving into negotiation mode, the civilized dissolution of assets and responsibilities. She thought the worst part was over. Yes, obviously, we'll need to figure out living arrangements and the house, and I've already handled the living arrangements. I moved all the money from our joint accounts into my personal account this morning. I've also contacted a locksmith. The locks will be changed by noon. The relief disappeared. You can't do that. This is my house too. Actually, if you check the deed, which I did, around 3 a.m., you'll find that the house is in my name only. We bought it before we were married, remember? You never got around to adding your name to the paperwork. I smiled at her. Funny how these little details matter. Owen, be reasonable. I need somewhere to live. I'm sure Trent can help you with that. He seems very helpful. I walked to the window and looked out at the Malloy house next door. Trent's truck was in the driveway, but I didn't see any sign of Laurel's car. Speaking of Trent, how's his relationship going? Still engaged? Or did last night complicate things? Nina followed my gaze. Laurel left him. She packed her things and left this morning. How terrible for him. I'm sure he's devastated. I turned back to her. So now you're both free to be together. Isn't that wonderful? True love conquers all. It's not that simple. No? Why not? You said you had real feelings for each other. You said he understood you in ways I never could. What's complicated about that? She sat back down, suddenly looking very tired. His business is struggling. He was counting on Laurel's income to help with the mortgage. And my job. Mike saw the video from last night. He's not happy about the company being associated with that kind of drama. Ah. I poured myself a fresh cup of coffee, taking my time. So let me understand this. You blew up your marriage for a man who can't pay his bills, and now your job is in jeopardy because you couldn't keep your hands off him at a party. Does that about sum it up? You're enjoying this. I'm finding it educational. I sat back down across from her. Here's what's going to happen, Nina. You're going to pack your things and leave. You're going to find somewhere else to live, whether that's with Trent or Angie or a cardboard box under the highway. I don't particularly care. Owen, I'm not finished. You're also going to discover that having an affair has social consequences. People talk, they judge, they take sides. And since everyone in town watched you humiliate me last night, I'm guessing most of them aren't going to be on your side. She was crying now, but they were angry tears, not sad ones. You can't just destroy my entire life because you're hurt. I'm not destroying your life, Nina. You did that yourself. I'm just making sure you don't get to walk away without experiencing any of the consequences. I stood up again. You have 2 hours to pack whatever you can carry. After that, the locks change and anything you leave behind becomes my property. This isn't you, Owen. You're not this cruel. She was wrong. This was me, or at least it was the me that had been hiding under 8 years of trying to be a good husband to a woman who didn't deserve it. The me that was tired of being the reasonable one, the understanding one, the one who always got stepped on because I was too nice to fight back. You're right, I said. The old Owen wasn't cruel, but you eliminated him last night. This is the new Owen, and he plays by different rules. I left her sitting at the kitchen table and went upstairs to shower. When I came back down, she was gone, but I could hear her moving around in the bedroom, packing. I made myself breakfast and ate it slowly, listening to the sounds of my wife erasing herself from our house. She came downstairs an hour later with 2 suitcases and a box of personal items. Her face was red and puffy from crying, but her jaw was set with determination. This isn't over, Owen. Yes, it is. I'll get a lawyer. I'll fight you for half of everything. With what money? You just lost your job, remember? I took another bite of toast. But please, get a lawyer. I'd love to see you explain to a judge why you deserve half of everything after conducting a 4-month affair and humiliating me publicly. She opened her mouth to say something else, then seemed to think better of it. Instead, she picked up her bags and walked to the door. Nina? She turned back, hope flickering in her eyes like maybe I was going to apologize, maybe the old Owen was going to resurface and try to work things out. Leave your key on the table. The hope faded. She dropped the key with a sharp metallic sound and walked out of my life. I finished my breakfast in peace, then called the locksmith to confirm our appointment. After that, I called my work to let them know I'd be taking a few personal days. Then I opened my laptop and started planning the next phase of Nina's education in consequences. It was going to be a very interesting week. By Monday morning, the entire neighborhood knew about Nina's midnight performance. I discovered this when I stepped outside to get my newspaper and found Mrs. Patterson from 3 houses down walking her dog past my house for the 3rd time in 10 minutes. "Morning, Owen," she called out, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "How are you holding up, dear?" "Just fine, Mrs. Patterson. Thanks for asking." If you need anything, anything at all, you just let me know. It's terrible what some people will do. Just terrible. She glanced meaningfully at the Malloy house next door. Some people have no shame. I was beginning to understand that Nina's public declaration of love had turned her into the neighborhood villain and me into an object of pity. Under normal circumstances, this would have embarrassed me. But these weren't normal circumstances, and I wasn't the same person I'd been a week ago. I appreciate that, Mrs. Patterson. Actually, you might be able to help me with something. Her eyes lit up. Nothing made Mrs. Patterson happier than being asked to help, especially when that help involved neighborhood gossip. Of course, dear. What do you need? I'm trying to get in touch with Laurel Hendricks, Trent's ex-fiancée. I thought she might have left some things at his house, and I'd hate for her to lose them in all this mess. This was a lie, but it was the kind of thoughtful lie that made Mrs. Patterson beam with approval. Oh, what a considerate man you are. She's staying with her sister on Elm Street, the blue house with the white shutters, number 47. Poor thing was in tears when she left yesterday morning. Thank you. I'll make sure she gets her things back. Mrs. Patterson practically glowed with the satisfaction of being helpful. You're a good man, Owen Barlow. A good man. After she left, I went back inside and looked up Laurel Hendricks on social media. It didn't take long to find her profile, and it took even less time to find her phone number through a reverse lookup site. One of the advantages of working in IT, you learn how to find information that other people think is private. I called her at noon, after she'd had time to get settled at her sister's house, but before she'd had time to start moving on with her life. Hello? Her voice was hoarse, like she'd been crying. Laurel? This is Owen Barlow, Nina's husband. I was wondering if we could talk. There was a long pause. I don't think that's a good idea. I understand why you'd feel that way, but I think we have more in common than you might realize. We've both been betrayed by people we trusted. We've both been made fools of by people who were supposed to love us. Another pause, longer this time. What do you want, Owen? I want to buy you a cup of coffee and show you something that I think you deserve to see. What kind of something? The kind of something that will help you understand exactly who Trent Malloy really is. She agreed to meet me at a coffee shop downtown, away from the neighborhood where everyone knew our business. I arrived first and chose a table in the back corner, away from the windows and the other customers. When Laurel walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. The woman I'd met at the New Year's Eve party had been polished and confident, the kind of person who looked like she had her life figured out. This woman looked like she'd been hit by a truck. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, her eyes were red-rimmed, and she was wearing an oversized sweater that looked like it belonged to someone else. Owen? She approached the table cautiously, like she wasn't sure this was a good idea. Thank you for coming. Can I get you something to drink? Just coffee, black. I bought her coffee and a sandwich she didn't ask for, figuring she probably hadn't been eating much since her world collapsed. When I sat back down, she was staring at the table like it held the answers to all of life's problems. How are you holding up? I asked. She laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. How do you think? The man I was supposed to marry in 3 months has been cheating on me with my neighbor's wife. Everyone in town knows about it. I had to move out of the house we bought together because I can't afford the mortgage on my own. She looked up at me. How are you holding up? About the same. So, what did you want to show me? I opened my laptop and turned the screen toward her. Text messages between Nina and Trent, going back to July. I thought you should see them. Her face went through the same cycle of emotions Nina's had. Shock, hurt, anger, and finally a cold kind of fury that I recognized because I'd been feeling it myself for the past 3 days. She read in silence for several minutes, scrolling through months of messages that detailed not just the affair, but the casual cruelty with which both Nina and Trent had discussed their respective partners. When she finally looked up, her eyes were dry but hard. He called me a boring prude who doesn't understand him. Nina called me clueless and pathetic. They laughed about us. They actually laughed about how stupid we were for not figuring it out. They thought they were so clever. Laurel closed the laptop and sat back in her chair. What do you want from me, Owen? Revenge? Because I'm not that kind of person. What kind of person are you? The kind who believes that living well is the best revenge. The kind who thinks that good people eventually get what they deserve and bad people eventually get what they deserve. And how's that working out for you so far? She didn't answer, but her expression told me everything I needed to know. I'm not asking you to do anything terrible, I said. I'm just asking you to help me make sure that actions have consequences. That people who hurt other people don't get to walk away without experiencing any pain themselves. What did you have in mind? I leaned forward. Trent's business is struggling, right? He was counting on your income to help with expenses. He owes 3 months of back rent on his office space. The landlord's been calling every day. And now, without your income, and with his reputation damaged by the affair, how long do you think it'll take before he loses the business entirely? Probably not long. Why? Because I think the people of Millbrook deserve to know what kind of man they're hiring to work on their property. Don't you think they deserve to know that he's the kind of person who cheats on his fiancée and destroys marriages? Laurel stared at me for a long moment. You want me to help you ruin him? I want you to help me make sure he faces the consequences of his choices, just like we're facing the consequences of trusting the wrong people. She picked up her coffee cup and held it between her hands like she was trying to warm herself. What would I have to do? Nothing illegal, nothing that isn't true. Just help me make sure the right information gets to the right people at the right time. And what about Nina? What about her? Are you planning to ruin her too? I smiled, and I could see that it made her uncomfortable. Nina's doing a fine job of ruining herself. I'm just making sure she doesn't get any help putting the pieces back together. Laurel was quiet for a long time, staring out the window at the people walking by on the sidewalk. Normal people living normal lives, people who hadn't had their worlds destroyed by the selfishness of others. I loved him, she said finally. I really loved him. I thought we were going to have a life together. I know. I keep thinking about all the signs I missed, all the times he was working late or meeting with clients, all the times he seemed distracted or distant. I feel so stupid. You're not stupid. You're trusting. There's a difference. Is there? Because right now it feels like the same thing. I reached across the table and touched her hand. The difference is that trusting people don't deserve what happened to us, but people who take advantage of that trust, they deserve everything that's coming to them. She looked down at my hand on hers, then back up at my face. Okay. Okay? Okay, I'll help you. But I want to be clear about something. I'm not doing this because I want revenge. I'm doing this because you're right. Actions should have consequences. And maybe if Trent and Nina face some real consequences for what they did, they'll think twice before they do it to someone else. I squeezed her hand. That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say. We spent the next hour planning. Laurel knew Trent's business better than anyone. She'd been helping him with his books for 2 years, trying to get his finances organized. She knew which clients were unhappy, which bills were overdue, which relationships were hanging by a thread. More importantly, she knew how to contact his biggest clients, the ones whose contracts kept his business afloat. The country club where he maintained the golf course, the upscale neighborhood where he did weekly lawn service for a dozen houses, the commercial properties that provided steady income. His contract with Millbrook Country Club comes up for renewal next month, she told me. The club president is very concerned about image and reputation. If he knew about the affair, he'd find a more reliable contractor. Exactly. And the residential clients? Most of them are older, conservative. They hired Trent because they thought he was a stable, reliable young man who was engaged to a nice girl. If they knew what kind of person he really was. They'd find someone else to mow their lawns. Right. By the time we left the coffee shop, we had a plan. Not a complicated plan, not an illegal plan, but an effective one. We were going to make sure that everyone who did business with Trent Malloy knew exactly what kind of man he was. And we were going to make sure that Nina's professional reputation suffered the same kind of damage her personal reputation already had. As I walked Laurel to her car, she turned to me with a question I'd been expecting. Owen, are you sure about this? Once we start down this path, there's no going back. I looked across the street at a young couple walking hand in hand, probably planning their future together, probably trusting each other completely. A week ago, that had been me. A week ago, I'd believed in love and marriage and the basic goodness of people. That man was gone. I'm sure, I told her. Are you? She nodded. I'm sure. We shook hands like business partners, which I suppose we were. Partners in the business of making sure that people who destroyed other people's lives didn't get to walk away unscathed. It was going to be a very satisfying partnership. The first domino fell on Wednesday morning when Trent lost his contract with Millbrook Country Club. I know this because Laurel called me at 7 a.m. with barely contained excitement in her voice. It worked, she said. Mr. Richardson called Trent at 6:30 this morning to inform him that the club had decided to go with a different landscaping company. What did he tell him? That the club couldn't be associated with anyone whose personal conduct might reflect poorly on their reputation. Apparently, someone sent Richardson a very detailed email about Trent's affair, complete with photos from your New Year's Eve party. I smiled, sipping my coffee in the kitchen that used to belong to Nina and me, and now belonged just to me. How terrible for him. I hope whoever sent that email included accurate information. Oh, it was very accurate, and very thorough. It even included some of those text messages where Trent bragged about nailing the hot real estate photographer while her nerd husband was at work. Trent always had such a way with words. The country club contract was worth $30,000 a year, Owen. Without it, he can't make his equipment payments. And without his equipment, he can't service his other clients. It's like watching a house of cards collapse. I could hear the satisfaction in her voice, and it matched what I was feeling. For the first time since New Year's Eve, I felt like the universe was operating according to some kind of logic. What's the status on his other contracts? I'm having lunch with Mrs. Whitman this afternoon. She's the head of the Millbrook Heights Homeowners Association. They represent about 20 of Trent's residential clients. Mrs. Whitman was a 70-year-old retired teacher who ran the Homeowners Association like a military operation. She was also deeply religious and had very strong opinions about moral conduct. I think Mrs. Whitman will be very interested in learning about Trent's character, Laurel continued, especially when she finds out that he was conducting his affair in the back of his work truck, in her neighborhood, during business hours. He did that? According to the text messages, yes. Multiple times. Nina even joked about it, said something about christening every cul-de-sac in Millbrook Heights. I felt a fresh wave of disgust, not just at the affair itself, but at the casual disrespect they'd shown for everyone around them. They'd turned our neighborhood, our community, into their personal playground, while the rest of us went about our lives completely unaware. Mrs. Whitman is going to have a field day with that information. I'm counting on it. After Laurel hung up, I turned my attention to Nina's situation. She'd been staying at Angie's house since New Year's Eve, but according to my sources, Mrs. Patterson had become an invaluable intelligence asset. The arrangement was getting strained. Angie was divorced and lived in a small 2-bedroom house with her teenage daughter. Having Nina camped out on her couch was creating tension, especially since Nina's dramatic exit from our marriage had made her the center of neighborhood gossip. Angie liked being connected to drama, but she didn't like having drama living in her house. More importantly, Nina's job situation was getting desperate. Mike Brennan had put her on administrative leave, pending a review of her conduct. In corporate speak, this meant he was trying to figure out how to fire her without getting sued. I decided it was time to help him with that decision. Mike's office was in a converted Victorian house downtown, the kind of place that tried to look more successful than it actually was. I'd been there before, back when Nina and I were still pretending to be happily married, and she dragged me to office Christmas parties. I walked in at 11 a.m., when I knew Mike would be between appointments. The receptionist, a young woman named Jessica who'd always been friendly to me, looked surprised to see me. "Owen, how are you? I heard about... Well, I'm sorry about everything that's been happening." "Thank you, Jessica. I'm doing better than expected, actually. Is Mike available?" I wanted to discuss Nina's employment situation. Her face went carefully neutral. "Let me check if he's free." Mike appeared a few minutes later, looking like a man who'd been hoping this conversation would never happen. He was in his 50s, overweight, with the kind of mustache that had gone out of style in 1987. He'd always made me uncomfortable with the way he looked at Nina, but I'd told myself I was being paranoid. Turns out, I wasn't paranoid enough. "Owen, good to see you. Come on back to my office." His office was exactly what you'd expect from a small-time real estate photographer trying to look important. Fake leather furniture, motivational posters, and a desk covered with papers that probably weren't as important as they looked. "I have to say, I'm sorry about what happened at your party," Mike said, settling into his chair. "That must have been very difficult for you." "It was educational," I replied, "which is actually why I'm here. I've learned some things about Nina's conduct that I thought you should know about." His face went pale. "What kind of things?" I opened my laptop and showed him the same text messages I'd shown Laurel, but I focused on a different subset, the ones where Nina bragged about using company equipment and company time for her personal activities. As you can see, Nina's been using the company camera and the company van for some very unprofessional purposes. She's also been billing clients for time she was actually spending with her boyfriend. Mike scrolled through the messages, his face getting redder with each one. "Jesus Christ, Owen, where did you get these?" "They were on her phone, which was synced to our home computer, which I have every legal right to access." I leaned back in my chair. "The question is, what are you going to do about it?" She's been stealing from the company. That's one way to put it. Another way to put it is that she's been committing fraud against your clients, billing them for services while she was actually having an affair with her boyfriend in the back of your company van." Mike looked like he was going to be sick. "If the clients find out about this, they're going to wonder what kind of operation you're running here. They're going to question your judgment in hiring someone like Nina. They're going to worry about what other corners you might be cutting." "What do you want, Owen?" It was the same question Nina had asked me, and it had the same answer. "I want Nina to face the consequences of her actions. I want her to understand that you can't betray people and destroy relationships and walk away without any damage to yourself." "So you want me to fire her?" "I want you to do whatever you think is appropriate for someone who's been stealing from your company and defrauding your clients." Mike stared at the laptop screen for a long moment, then closed it and handed it back to me. "She's fired, effective immediately, and I'm going to have to report this to the Better Business Bureau." "That seems reasonable." "Owen, I need you to know that I had no idea this was going on. If I had known..." "You would have stopped it?" "Of course." I stood up to leave, then turned back. "Mike? One more thing. That video from the New Year's Eve party, where Nina and Trent are making out in my kitchen. You're in the background of that video. You're watching them and smiling." His face went white. "Owen, I can explain." "No need. I just wanted you to know that I saw it, that I know exactly what kind of man you are." I smiled at him. "Have a good day, Mike." I left him sitting in his fake leather chair, probably wondering how much of his business was going to survive the scandal that was about to engulf it. By Thursday afternoon, both Nina and Trent were discovering that actions really do have consequences. Trent had lost 2 major contracts and was facing the cancellation of several more. His equipment was being repossessed, and his office landlord had started eviction proceedings. Nina was unemployed, effectively homeless, and facing the possibility of fraud charges. Angie had asked her to find somewhere else to stay, and her other friends were suddenly too busy to return her phone calls. I knew all this because Laurel had become my eyes and ears in the community, and Mrs. Patterson had become my unwitting intelligence source. Between the two of them, I had a complete picture of how thoroughly Nina and Trent's lives were falling apart. It should have been enough. A reasonable person would have called it even and moved on with his life. But I wasn't feeling particularly reasonable. Thursday evening, I was in my workshop in the basement, organizing tools and thinking about what to do next, when my doorbell rang. I opened the door to find Trent standing on my porch, looking like he hadn't slept in days. "We need to talk," he said. "Do we? You're destroying my life, Owen. You and that crazy snake Laurel." I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. "I'm sorry, did you just call Laurel a crazy snake? The woman you were engaged to marry? The woman you cheated on with my wife?" "She's been calling my clients, telling them lies about me." "What lies?" "She told Mrs. Whitman that I was having an affair with Nina in my work truck, in her neighborhood." "That's not a lie, Trent. That's exactly what you did. I have the text messages to prove it." His face went red. "Those messages were private." "So was my marriage, but that didn't stop you from destroying it." "Look, I know you're pissed about what happened at the party, but this has gone far enough. You've cost me my business, my reputation, everything I worked for." "Good." The simple word seemed to hit him like a physical blow. "What?" I said good. "I'm glad you've lost your business. I'm glad your reputation is ruined. I'm glad everything you worked for is gone." I stepped closer to him. "Because that's exactly what you and Nina did to me. That's different. You'll bounce back from this. You've got your job, your house, your savings. I've got nothing left. You should have thought about that before you decided to sleep with my wife." He took a step back, probably realizing for the first time that I wasn't the same pushover he'd been dealing with for 2 years. "Owen, be reasonable. We can work this out." "No, we can't, because this isn't about working anything out. This is about you learning that actions have consequences. You can't just destroy people's lives because you're hurt." I laughed, and the sound made him flinch. "I'm not destroying your life, Trent. You destroyed your life when you decided to cheat on your fiancée with your neighbor's wife. I'm just making sure you don't get to pretend it never happened." "This isn't over." "Yes, it is. Your business is finished. Your reputation is shot. Your fiancé is helping me make sure everyone in town knows exactly what kind of man you are." I smiled at him. "Face it, Trent. You lost." He stood there for a moment, probably trying to think of some threat that would make me back down. But there was nothing he could threaten me with that was worse than what he'd already done. Finally, he turned and walked back to his truck. I watched him drive away, then went back inside to continue planning the final phase of Nina and Trent's education in consequences. The best was yet to come. The Millbrook Winter Festival was scheduled for the second Saturday in February, 6 weeks after my marriage exploded in front of half the neighborhood. It was an annual tradition, a community celebration that brought together local businesses, families, and anyone who wanted to pretend that small-town life was still wholesome and uncomplicated. This year, it was going to be the perfect stage for the final act of my revenge. I'd been planning it for weeks, ever since I realized that both Nina and Trent would be desperate enough to attend. Nina because she was trying to salvage what was left of her reputation and find new clients for her photography business. Trent because he was making one last attempt to save his landscaping company by networking with potential customers. Neither of them knew that I'd been working behind the scenes to make sure their appearance at the festival would be memorable for all the wrong reasons. The festival was held in the town square, with booths and displays set up around a central stage where local musicians and speakers would entertain the crowd throughout the day. I arrived early, ostensibly to help with setup, but really to make sure everything was in place for what was about to happen. Laurel met me by the coffee booth, looking nervous but determined. Over the past month, she'd become my partner in ensuring that Nina and Trent faced appropriate consequences for their actions. She'd also become something more than that, though neither of us had talked about it yet. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, glancing around at the families setting up picnic blankets and the vendors arranging their displays. "I'm sure. Are you?" She nodded, but I could see the uncertainty in her eyes. "It just seems so public." "That's the point. They humiliated us in public. They made our private pain into public entertainment. Now they get to experience the same thing. And if it goes too far, it won't. Everything we're doing is legal, truthful, and proportional to what they did to us." I touched her arm. "Trust me." She did trust me, which was more than I deserved, but exactly what I needed. Nina arrived around noon, carrying a portfolio of her photography work and wearing the kind of smile that looked painted on. She'd lost weight over the past month, and her clothes hung loose on her frame. The confident woman who'd kissed my neighbor in front of everyone was gone, replaced by someone who looked like she was barely holding herself together. She set up a small display near the craft booths, trying to attract potential clients for her freelance photography business. A few people stopped to look at her work, but most of them moved on quickly when they recognized her. Word travels fast in small towns, and Nina's reputation had preceded her. Trent arrived an hour later, driving a borrowed truck since his own had been repossessed. He was handing out flyers for his landscaping business, trying to drum up enough work to keep himself afloat for another month. Like Nina, he was getting polite smiles and quick exits from most of the people he approached. They found each other around 2 o'clock, gravitating together like two drowning people reaching for the same life preserver. I watched them from across the square, noting the way they stood close together but didn't touch, the way they kept glancing around to see who was watching them. "They look miserable," Laurel observed. "They should. They've lost everything that mattered to them. Do you feel sorry for them at all?" I considered the question, watching Nina try to convince a young mother to hire her for family portraits, while the woman edged away with obvious discomfort. "No," I said. "I don't." At 3 o'clock, the festival's main event began, a community slideshow featuring photos from local events throughout the year. It was projected onto a large screen set up on the main stage, visible from anywhere in the square. I'd volunteered to help organize the slideshow, which meant I had access to the projection system. It also meant I could add a few extra slides to the presentation. The slideshow started normally, with pictures from the summer concert series, the Fall Harvest Festival, and various school events. People gathered around the stage, pointing out friends and family members in the photos, laughing at candid shots and embarrassing moments. Then, about 10 minutes into the presentation, the tone changed. The screen filled with a photo from my New Year's Eve party, Nina and Trent, in a passionate embrace while other party guests looked on in shock and disgust. The crowd went silent, then began murmuring as people recognized the faces on screen. The next slide was a screenshot of text messages between Nina and Trent, with their names clearly visible. Messages where they mocked their respective partners, planned their secret meetings, and bragged about their affair. "Jesus Christ," someone in the crowd said loudly. "Is that real?" The slideshow continued, each image more damaging than the last. Photos of Trent's work truck parked behind various houses during business hours, time-stamped to match the times when he was supposed to be working elsewhere. Screenshots of Nina billing clients for photography sessions that never happened because she was busy with her boyfriend. Nina and Trent had both realized what was happening by now. I could see them across the square, standing frozen in horror as their private shame was displayed for the entire community to see. "Turn it off!" Nina screamed, pushing through the crowd toward the stage. "Turn it off right now!" But I wasn't operating the projector anymore. I'd set it on automatic and stepped away, blending into the crowd of spectators who were watching the show with fascination and disgust. Trent tried to reach the projection equipment, but a group of men from the country club blocked his path. "Let it play," one of them said. "We deserve to know what kind of people we've been dealing with." The final slide was the most devastating. A split-screen image showing Nina and Trent at our New Year's Eve party on one side, and Laurel crying as she ran from our house on the other. The caption read, "Actions have consequences." The crowd erupted in a mixture of boos, cheers, and shocked conversations. Some people were taking pictures with their phones, ensuring that Nina and Trent's humiliation would be preserved and shared far beyond the festival. Nina was crying now, not the angry tears she'd shed in our kitchen, but the broken sobs of someone whose world had completely collapsed. Trent was trying to comfort her, but he looked just as devastated. "How does it feel?" I called out, stepping forward so they could see me. "How does it feel to have your private shame turned into public entertainment?" Nina looked at me with an expression of pure hatred. "You bastard! You sick, twisted bastard! I'm twisted. I'm not the one who cheated on my spouse and humiliated them in front of everyone they knew. This is different. This is cruel. This is justice." The crowd was starting to disperse, people drifting away in small groups, discussing what they'd just witnessed. Some of them looked at Nina and Trent with disgust, others with pity, but none with respect or understanding. Trent stepped forward, his face red with anger and embarrassment. "You think you've won, Owen? You think destroying us makes you some kind of hero? I think it makes us even." "Even? You've cost me my business, my home, my reputation. You've turned the entire town against us." "The way you turned everyone at our New Year's Eve party against me?" "That was one night. This is our entire lives." "Then you should have thought about that before you decided to sleep with my wife." Laurel appeared at my side, taking my arm. "Owen, let's go. It's over." She was right. It was over. Nina and Trent were finished in Millbrook. Their businesses were destroyed, their reputations were in ruins, and their relationship was built on a foundation of betrayal and selfishness that would never support anything lasting. They would probably leave town, start over somewhere else, and maybe learn to be better people. Or maybe they'd repeat the same pattern with new victims. Either way, it wasn't my problem anymore. As we walked away from the festival, Laurel squeezed my arm. "How do you feel?" I thought about it, taking inventory of my emotions. The anger was still there, but it was quieter now, satisfied rather than burning. The hurt was still there too, but it felt manageable, like a scar instead of an open wound. I feel like justice has been served. And now what? Now we move on with our lives. We build something better than what we had before. She smiled, and for the first time since New Year's Eve, it felt like the future held possibilities instead of just pain. Behind us, I could hear Nina and Trent arguing, their voices carrying across the square as they blamed each other for the disaster their lives had become. But their voices were getting fainter, and soon I couldn't hear them at all, which was exactly how I wanted it. 3 weeks after the festival, Nina and Trent made their final mistake. They decided to confront me at my house, thinking that together they could intimidate me into backing down, or at least into feeling guilty about what I'd done to them. They were wrong on both counts. I was in my basement workshop, organizing the tools and equipment I'd inherited when Nina moved out, when I heard car doors slamming in my driveway. Through the small window, I could see Trent's borrowed truck and Nina climbing out of the passenger seat. They looked terrible. Trent had lost at least 20 pounds, and his clothes hung on him like he was a scarecrow. Nina's hair was unwashed, her makeup was smeared, and she was wearing the same outfit she'd worn to the festival 3 weeks earlier. I could have stayed in the basement and ignored them, but that wasn't the point. The point was to face them one final time and make sure they understood exactly what they'd brought on themselves. I went upstairs and opened the front door before they could knock. Nina, Trent, what a pleasant surprise. Cut the shit, Owen, Trent said. We need to talk. Do we? I thought we'd said everything we needed to say. Nina stepped forward, and I could smell alcohol on her breath even though it was only 2 in the afternoon. You've destroyed our lives. Are you happy now? Getting there. We lost everything because of you. Everything. You lost everything because of your own choices. I just made sure those choices had consequences. Trent pushed past Nina, getting close enough that I could see the desperation in his eyes. You want to know what consequences look like? I'm living in my truck. My business is gone. My credit is ruined. And I can't even get a job mowing lawns because everyone in 3 counties knows what you did to me. What I did to you? That slideshow, those text messages. You had no right to share our private communications. I laughed, and the sound made both of them flinch. You had no right to sleep with my wife, but that didn't stop you. This is different. What we did was between consenting adults. What you did was public humiliation. Like the public humiliation you put me through at our New Year's Eve party. That was one moment. You've been torturing us for months. And I've enjoyed every minute of it. Nina started crying again, the same broken sobs I'd seen at the festival. Why won't you just leave us alone? We get it, okay? We made mistakes. We hurt you. But this has to stop. Does it? Yes, we're sorry. We're both sorry. Isn't that enough? I looked at her. This woman I'd loved for 8 years. This woman who'd shared my bed and my dreams and my plans for the future. She was a stranger now, a pathetic creature who'd destroyed everything good in her life for a few months of excitement with a man who was just as weak and selfish as she was. No, I said. It's not enough. What do you want from us? Trent demanded. What will it take to make you stop? I want you to understand that actions have consequences. I want you to know that you can't betray people and destroy their lives and expect to walk away unscathed. We understand. Jesus Christ, how could we not understand? You've made sure of that. Have I? Because it seems to me that you still think you're the victims here. You still think that what happened to you is somehow unfair or disproportionate. Nina wiped her nose with the back of her hand, leaving a streak of snot on her cheek. We never meant to hurt anyone. But you did hurt people. You hurt me, you hurt Laurel, you hurt everyone who trusted you and believed in you. We know that now. Do you? Or do you just know that getting caught was inconvenient? Trent stepped forward again, close enough that I could feel his breath on my face. You want to know the truth, Owen? Fine. Here's the truth. Nina and I are together now, really together. And we're leaving Millbrook. We're going to start over somewhere else, and there's nothing you can do to stop us. I don't want to stop you. I want you to go. I want you to take your pathetic relationship and your ruined reputations and disappear from my life forever. Then why won't you leave us alone? Because you haven't learned your lesson yet. You're still playing the victim. You're still acting like what happened to you was somehow unjust. Nina looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. What lesson? What do you want us to learn? I want you to learn that love isn't just a feeling. It's a commitment. It's a promise you make to another person, and when you break that promise, people get hurt. We know that. Do you? Because if you really knew that, you would have ended your respective relationships before you started seeing each other. You would have been honest with the people who loved you, instead of sneaking around and lying and making fools of us. Trent grabbed my shirt, bunching the fabric in his fists. Enough. This ends now. Does it? Yes. You're going to stop harassing us, stop spreading lies about us, and stop interfering with our lives. Or what? Or I'll make you stop. I looked down at his hands on my shirt, then back up at his face. Are you threatening me, Trent? I'm telling you how it's going to be. Let me tell you how it's actually going to be. I grabbed his wrists and squeezed, applying pressure to the nerve points I'd learned in a self-defense class years earlier. His grip loosened immediately. "You're going to get your hands off me, get back in your truck and drive away. You're going to leave Millbrook like you said you would, and you're never going to contact me again. And if we don't? Then I'll release the rest of the evidence I have about your affair. The photos, the videos, the financial records showing how you both stole from your employers. I'll make sure it follows you wherever you go." Nina's face went white. "What photos? What videos? You really thought I only had text messages? You really thought I hadn't been documenting your affair from the moment I discovered it?" I released Trent's wrists and stepped back, pulling out my phone. "Would you like to see the video I took of you two in his truck last month? Or maybe the photos of you using company equipment for your personal photo shoots? I have hours of footage, Nina. Hours." She sank to her knees on my front porch, finally understanding the full scope of what I'd been planning. "You've been watching us. All this time, you've been watching us. I've been making sure I had enough evidence to destroy you completely if you ever tried to come after me." Trent helped Nina to her feet, his face pale and shaken. "You're insane. I'm thorough. This isn't over, Owen. Yes, it is. Because if I see either of you again, if you contact me or Laurel or anyone else in my life, I'll make what happened at the festival look like a gentle warning." They stood there for a moment, probably trying to think of some comeback, some threat that would give them back a little dignity, but there was nothing left to say. Finally, they turned and walked back to the truck. I watched them drive away, noting the way they sat on opposite sides of the cab, not touching, not talking, just two broken people who'd destroyed everything good in their lives for a few months of selfish pleasure. I went back inside and poured myself a drink, then called Laurel to tell her it was finally over. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Like I can finally move on with my life. Any regrets?" I thought about it, considering the question seriously. Did I regret destroying Nina and Trent's lives? Did I regret the months of planning and scheming and carefully orchestrated revenge? "No," I said. "No regrets." "Good, because they deserved everything that happened to them." She was right. They had deserved it. And more importantly, I had deserved the satisfaction of making sure they faced real consequences for their actions. The next morning, I woke up in a house that belonged entirely to me, in a bed that had never been shared with anyone who didn't deserve to be there. I made coffee and read the newspaper and planned my day without having to consider anyone else's needs or wants or feelings. For the first time in months, I felt truly at peace. Nina and Trent left Millbrook 2 days later, driving away in the middle of the night like the cowards they'd always been. Mrs. Patterson saw them go and called to tell me about it, her voice full of satisfaction. "Good riddance," she said. "The neighborhood's better off without people like that." I agreed. A week later, Laurel moved into the house next door, the one Trent had been forced to abandon when he couldn't make the mortgage payments. She got it for a fraction of its value, a foreclosure sale that gave her the fresh start she deserved. We had dinner together that night, sitting on my back porch and watching the sunset over the garden that used to be Trent's pride and joy. It was overgrown now, weeds choking out the flowers he'd planted, but Laurel said she was looking forward to fixing it up. "Any word from them?" she asked. "Nothing. And there won't be. They know better than to try to contact me." "Do you think they'll make it? As a couple, I mean?" I considered the question, thinking about the way they'd looked at each other on my front porch, the blame and resentment already poisoning whatever they thought they had together. No. Relationships built on betrayal don't last. They'll destroy each other eventually, just like they destroyed us. But we didn't get destroyed. No, we got better. She smiled and reached for my hand, and I realized she was right. We had gotten better, stronger, more careful about who we trusted, but also more appreciative of trust when it was earned. Nina and Trent had taken something from us, But they'd also given us something. The knowledge that we were capable of surviving betrayal, of fighting back, of making sure that actions had consequences. It was a hard lesson, but a valuable one. And as I sat there with Laurel, watching the sun set over the ruins of Trent's garden, I felt something I hadn't felt since before New Year's Eve: genuine happiness. Nina and Trent were gone, their lives in shambles, their reputations destroyed, their relationship built on a foundation of lies and selfishness that would never support anything lasting. I was still here, still standing, still capable of love and trust, and building something better than what I'd lost. In the end, that was the best revenge of all.